There is no shortage of commentary on U.S. China technology competition. But too often these analyses are either repetitive or frankly reactive to the headlines. And yet there is no more important economic security issue facing the United States. And so our team here at the Economic Security and Technology Department at CSIS decided to take a look at this issue with a fresh pair of eyes, and with a focus on how America can play the long game the way Beijing does. Our Technology Edge report, which we recently launched, takes a hard-nosed look at the drivers of technology leadership, the underlying ecosystem strengths here and in China. It assesses our ability to build dexterity across different technologies that will matter, our ability to achieve speed and scale, and our ability to defend our networks of innovators and trading partners. But the American technology long game is going to require more than just good analysis and practical solutions. It's going to require strong bipartisan support, robust to the vicissitudes of our politics, and rooted in the long-term interests of the United States. And that's why we were deeply honored to have Senator Maria Cantwell and Senator Todd Young join us for the launch of the Tech Edge report. They are two of our nation's leading voices on America's technology long game. I hope you'll find the conversation as enlightening and inspiring as I did. This is Naveen Girishankar. Welcome to this special episode of Betting on America. Senator Cantwell, Senator Young, really deeply honored that you would be here to join us for this conversation. Let me start out, both of you have led on numerous aspects of the technology revolutions that are afoot and how the U.S. can stay ahead. There is some pessimism. Oftentimes you hear observers saying, well, maybe the U.S. has not really found its footing while China plays the long game. And while people throw up a question, you both have, in your various ways, thrown down an exclamation point that we, in fact, can have a long game. So let me maybe start with Senator Young and then Senator Cantwell. What, in your view, is the approach to the U.S. long game on technology?
Well, thank you, Naveen, and thanks to CSIS for kicking this initiative off and having Senator Cantwell and myself here, Senator Cantwell being a leading tech advocate in Congress and somebody who's showed a lot of leadership, broadly speaking, as it relates to our technology portfolio. So we can lead. We can remain the leader because I think as it relates to most areas of technology, high technology, the United States leads in the development and ultimately the deployment and then the iterative redevelopment and redeployment of different technologies. But it's clear we need to up our game and we need to come up with a more systematic approach. I think it would be helpful for me to lay out just how I think about the tech long game. I've laid it out some months ago. I think it was last February that I published in the National Interest a piece you could find online if you like, entitled A Tech Power Playbook for Donald Trump 2.0. Mm-hmm. And in that Tech Power Playbook, I indicated that there are three things that our country needs to do. Number one, borrowing from Indiana University's great football team. I was prescient, one might say. But you need a strong offense. Number two, you need a strong defense. And then lastly, not to be underestimated, you need special teams. So the strong offense is investing in ourselves, using this moment of great power competition to become a better version of yourself. Investing in particular in research and development, but also in other areas of our ecosystem, infrastructure, workforce development, and so on. But I think that investment in research and development is really key. And the purpose there is to de-risk some of these technologies so that the private sector can step in. Mm-hmm. But it's also to come up with fundamental breakthroughs that benefit our entire economy and also our military effectiveness as well. The strong defense, it depends on the tech vector, but if you're talking about semiconductors, you're going to be thinking about export controls. We certainly need to harden ourselves against having our tech assets and our infrastructure in any way manipulated by our adversaries. One thinks of how some of our critical infrastructure has been infiltrated by the Chinese Communist Party in recent years. We've been caught on our heels, so we need to have a much more robust defense. And then special teams is the importance, and I think we'll get into this later, of tech alliances, of not trying to do everything ourselves. We don't have enough resources to do that, but pooling our expertise and resources to train workers, to harden supply chains by coming up with redundancies in our supply chains, so there's no critical point of failure when it comes to, say, semiconductors. We actually have multiple countries from which to source different things, and continuing to leverage the comparative advantage, the power of trade, but de-risking out of those countries that we can't depend on. And then lastly, special teams is, these are the group of individuals, and there are a number of ways to skin the cat. These are the individuals that make these connections and facilitate these connections with friendly and partner countries. In the CHIPS and Science Act, which Maria was instrumental in ushering through the committee as chairman of the Commerce Committee, we created a modestly funded group over at the State Department, the ITSE Fund, to train tech diplomats, to go out and work with other countries, identifying vulnerabilities in supply chains, and work together to fill those vulnerabilities and come up with these redundancies. It worked very well. We could adapt that model to some other technologies. But, I mean, this is the sort of construct that we need to apply tech sector by tech sector. And I do agree with John that we've got some work to do to look at the entire tech ecosystem. That could be a bit daunting, but we've got a major government enterprise here in Washington, D.C., and this is at once national security and economic security, so it's really important we get to work. I think in the near term, there are a few obvious things that we should be focused on as it relates to technology in Congress. Among them, artificial intelligence. There are some things we should be doing to come up with a legal and regulatory framework for AI that we haven't done to provide more certainty, because companies are only going to keep deploying these massive amounts of money if they have certainty about what the future looks like. Autonomous vehicles, much the same thing. We need permitting reform that I think is supported in a pretty strongly bipartisan way. But we need some leadership there to push that through Congress, get it on the president's desk. And there's some near-term opportunities to get started on this broader project that I think John alluded to in the beginning.
Highly compelling. I remember your Tech Power Playbook article. In fact, it motivated a lot of our research, and the football metaphor is even more compelling. Senator Cantwell, you've led on many of these things for many years. Both as the chair and now the ranking member of the Commerce Committee, across a number of pieces of landmark legislation. What's your version of the long game?
Well, Naveen, thank you so much. Thank you to CSIS for this invitation. It's great to be here with my colleague, Todd Young. And yes, we loved working on CHIPS and Science Act together and getting it over the goal line. Really, really important. And glad that he is such a loud voice on the continuation of those priorities. And it's great to be here with him. I want to congratulate you on your Tech Edge report. I think that I love the focus on ecosystem. I love the focus on the competitive advantage that China has in scaling and the focus that we need to have on manufacturing as a response to that, because that is something we really thought about in the CHIPS and Science Act. So when I think about the long game, I'm so blessed to represent the state of Washington in the United States Senate, one of the most innovative states, I think, in our country today. I break that down first and foremost by the number of scientists per capita, which is over 7%. So I think we probably lead as a state in that, particularly if you take out Virginia and Maryland, who just have a big housing of scientists working for the federal government. Why is that so important is because you want the constant ecosystem of those scientists and helping other people understand basic science and the proliferation of that science. So when I think about, Microsoft and AWS and Boeing and the space economy and the Allen Institute and their leadership on AI, and I think about, even just basic ag research that goes on in our state at WSU and a variety of other great institutions, it's an amazing, amazing ecosystem. I literally cannot keep up with the innovation in our state. I could spend weeks going around visiting companies and still not even break the barrier for how much innovation is going on. So when I look at that, the CHIPS and Science Act was how, if we think about this, and we had this telling moment when we had Secretary Raimondo come to Washington, and we had a briefing and a bunch of people, and somebody pulled us aside and said, "Tell us where you're going and we'll follow." And we looked at each other and we were like, "What are you saying?" And this person said, "You can't do all the innovation you want to do in expensive places like Seattle and Silicon Valley. So we want to follow where you're going to make more innovation." So the point is, we need the Washington state ecosystem. It'll continue to thrive. Trust me, there's no way you're slowing it down. There is just, I could go on for 15 minutes just about fusion and what's happening on fusion. But the point is, if America is going to compete with China, we need that innovation to be across the United States. We need to build the basis by which those innovative instruments and the structure of them exist in various places. Why? Well, when you think about it, our economy, two guys named Bill Boeing and Bill Gates. Okay, those are pretty big economies by two guys named Bill. So, but if there's another Bill in Montana or in Alabama or a particular focus, then the United States is unleashing that amount of R&D investment into growing something. So this is why the tech hub idea in the CHIPS and Science Act became so popular with our colleagues and so popular overall, because it is about, it's almost when Intel put the plant in Ohio, it's almost like saying the high-tech economy is coming to a theater near you. And the level of investment that's now happening in and around Columbus becomes its own generator of more investment in R&D. So what we need is we need the United States to continue, particularly in the information age. The information age is that innovation can happen faster. So there's a warning there. Well, that means some people can look at your research and try to knock it off, which is what happened with the AI and China trying to accelerate after the initial successes of OpenAI. But so we have to be mindful, and it's not just China. Other countries will also try to take our science and implement it. So we have to be smarter, and that's what the Tech Edge report says. What do we need to do to be smarter? So one thing we don't need to do is to cut the scientific research budget in the United States. So the fact that the Trump administration and Doge and Vought all wanted to cut that, and now we're back to flat funding, at least with our portfolio in the NSF and NIST and all of that, is a big challenge. So somehow we got to get, Donald Trump to remember his, whatever it was, great uncle who worked at MIT and embrace the science investment part and stop shortchanging science investment. And obviously I don't agree on the tariffs. The tariffs are really having an effect. Research takes years and years and years. So if you create an exodus of researchers from the United States because people don't like our tariff policies, it's a big mistake. So let's get those things right. Let's get the investment right, and let's pay particular attention to the fact that the competition is taking our research and implementing it. And what can we do to counter that? And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, as we go through this panel. But really excited about the amount. If people were like, what's going on in the Northwest, we would have no problem. Okay, not to just promote that, but it is, I'm sure that's happening in Boston. I'm sure that's happening in Silicon Valley. I don't have as much knowledge about how that really looks. But what I'm saying is, if you can make that level of investment across the United States, I guarantee you the rest will be there for the long game for us.
Thank you, Senator. You've highlighted what I would describe as enablers for innovation across different technologies. You mentioned R&D. Senator, you've mentioned workforce. Let me just double-click on the R&D piece, because I think the science part of the CHIPS and Science Act is an important thing not to forget. I want to just come back to you, Senator Cantwell, and then I'll move to you, Senator Young. The Genesis mission is a significant initiative by the Trump administration, and the idea is to create an AI-driven platform with federal scientific data and various capabilities to actually accelerate the productivity of scientific research. There's no money behind it, but it is a significant initiative, and Dario Hill, Undersecretary there in DOE, is leading that. Any thoughts on that and how that can be broadened to really answer the mail on what you've laid out?
Well, I love the Genesis approach, and I think Steve Ashby, who left our Pacific Northwest laboratory, is going to try to help across the labs, in the implementation of this, and Dario and I think Kratsios at OSTP. This is great leadership. It really is taking AI in the research at the labs and basically getting done what might take 3 to 5 years and getting it done in a few months. It's amazing. And when you think about that, that again speeds up the discovery and the research in a significant way. So I love the idea that when you think about, okay, what are we doing in the world of AI, and I do think we need to talk more about applications that get the American public excited, because we're hearing a lot of things that make them very anxious. But when you talk particularly on the biology side, and you can see at a national lab that here's this research and it was going to take us 5 years to figure out the chemistry behind this, but by applying AI and working machines 24/7, something that a human couldn't do, and we will figure out this biology in a few months, which will lead to some sort of breakthrough. Yeah. It's a great initiative. And so I applaud our national labs for doing that, and I hope that we can think about other applications, particularly on the healthcare side, with NIH, and but it's really kind of like a low-hanging fruit when you think about it. Like, what can the government do to move faster on AI? This is one of the examples of getting our scientists, who really already understand AI and its implications, to apply it to their own research to get discovery in what I would call almost lightning speed.
Thank you, Senator. Talking about enablers, Senator Young, you've talked about speed and scale. Like, the Chinese move very, very quickly. We used to be known for big, bold engineering feats, and we can still do it, but we have some bottlenecks. One of them may be energy, another one workforce. You've mentioned some others. What are your thoughts on that piece of the playbook?
Well, thank you. Just very quickly,
yes,
before I get into that, if I could just add on what Maria said. I agree. I think we're in agreement that there's an opportunity as it relates to research and development right now to take some of these ideas in the Genesis mission and make our research enterprise more productive. I do believe that in the end, that's going to take not only continued investments, but sustained investments, and maybe even more investment as called for in the science portion of CHIPS and Science, in order to supercharge our tech enterprise and make sure we win this long game. I'd also emphasize that as we think about the tech revolution that's occurring, there's actually multiple revolutions going on, right? And so we need different things. We need energy in particular to sustain the age of AI, and permitting reform will facilitate that, as well as the deployment of more data centers. We need clearer rules in my own state, the most manufacturing intensive state in the country, so that we can enable this next generation of advanced manufacturing to occur. So And then workforce. Workforce will be key across all these tech areas, but I think of semiconductors in particular. We said from the very beginning, we can come up with the most elegant piece of legislation possible, but if in implementation we don't succeed in training all the technicians, all the way to the postdocs, this whole enterprise isn't going to be successful. So we've got a lot to think about in terms of enablement, but the bottlenecks, to turn to that, we should be thinking about speed. We should be thinking about scale. Scale is less of a problem oftentimes here in the United States because we have a massive domestic economy. Historically, we've developed strong trade relationships. We have the scale, assuming we continue to trade with the rest of the world and there's demand for these high-tech products. But I think in terms of speed, that's really where our federal government is stumbled a bit over the years. When seeking permits, there needs to be predictability about what the rules are. There needs to be a time limitation when seeking permits. A shot clock, so to speak, would be a good practice, but at the very least, optimize systems so that you can get through the process quickly. And so that there is certainty with respect to the investment environment. At some point, if you're an investor in autonomous vehicles, for example, you can continue to invest in these elegant technologies that have the ability to provide mobility to senior citizens and to people with disabilities and improve public safety and do these enormous things that also have national security spillover implications. But the investment will stop if the investors lose faith in our regulatory system because it becomes impossible to assess what your hurdle rate is for any given investment. So this is sometimes the boring but highly important work of government where we should on an ongoing basis be weeding the garden. We need to be optimizing these systems. The one that is really I'm fixated on right now because I think it's within the realm of the achievable, just if not today, then in coming months, and it's permitting reform because it makes so much else possible and so many of these other tech areas possible. I also think some rulemaking and the administration seems increasingly warm to this as it relates to AI would make some sense. And so those are some near-term opportunities, I think, for good bipartisan work. And hopefully work through Congress, not just the executive branch, because if we're working through Congress, we have the ability to make permanent law, which provides further certainty as opposed to executive orders.
And you've laid out with speed and scale certainly a bipartisan agenda, I think. You've talked about what is it going to take to what we call play all the keys across different technologies. And you talked about enablers, both of you. Speed and scale. The third thing, and again, I should thank you for your encouraging words about the work. And we are here to give as many ideas as we can to leaders such as yourself to the extent it could be helpful. The third one we mentioned is defending our networks. And you've talked about that, Senator Young. I'm going to start with you and then come to Senator Cantwell. We are in a world in which we can't do all things alone. In fact, we have had traditional allies for 3 generations that are part and parcel of our technology ecosystem. But there's some friction in light of the trade agenda that we are currently seeing roll out. What are your thoughts on how to fortify those networks in the moment that we're in?
Sure. The CHIPS and Science Act is often perceived, I think, by probably people outside this room as an economic development play, as a domestic initiative. That's how many advertised it going around the country. But I actually thought it was more of a foreign policy play, an economic security play. Because from the beginning, we knew it was, number one, we knew that we didn't, what were our goals? Our goals were never to become independent of other countries when it comes to particular components of a semiconductor. There are thousands of inputs that go into a semiconductor, and so it would be highly expensive and problematic to try and reshore all of that. Number two, it would be it would be inconsistent with our experience, which we become wealthy by being a trading nation. We become powerful, mobilizing our soft power to leverage that soft power and establish economic relationships with other countries. We tried to de-risk out of China and single points of failure around the perimeter of China into other countries that we can generally depend on to provide things when they say they're going to, and to play by the rules and establish more redundancies. And so a key component of that was these tech diplomats, some of whom resided at the State Department, others at Commerce and Treasury, identifying nodes that needed to be shored up and coming up with creative solutions, working with the private sector and private investors to develop these solutions. So this sort of analysis is going to have to occur on an ongoing basis. We regularly get better at our supply chain mapping, working with the private sector again, but there needs to be a government component to it to look at the entire enterprise and make sure that we're not baking vulnerabilities into the system. To make this real for a second, we all remember the global pandemic. Most of us want to forget it, but some of us were assured and then reassured for months and even years at a time, that the markets would heal our supply chain problems, right? The markets would adjust. Well, you go to Walmart, you try and buy whatever, a toaster or a calculator, you go to a car lot and try to get a vehicle, and you discover the markets weren't adjusting. There were some very sticky problems that could not be addressed in short order. A modern economy depended on looking at these things beforehand.
Yeah.
And the incentive to ensure that these nodes were addressed before a catastrophe hit were not internalized to individual investors or businesses. It's what you call a market failure. There are still some prominent editorial pages who have not admitted that a market failure occurred, right? And so that's the job of tech alliances, is collectively working on these very hard problems together. And I don't think there's any other way, any other smart way to win the tech long game.
Yeah, powerful concept. Senator Cantwell, you've talked about a tech NATO. And so when we build out this idea of a tech alliance, share with us your vision for that, particularly as we see an accelerating competition with China.
Well, I definitely believe in a co-opetition strategy with China, where you compete and cooperate on some things. I would cooperate, if you could, on clean energy solutions that could drive down the cost, something that would say something like the, export of technologies that don't have, extra cost to them just to get it implemented. But I definitely think we need to use our might to counter China. And the best way to do that is to create alliance with other smart technology countries. If you just took us and Japan and Europe and India and basically a few others and said, okay, we're going to say these are the rules of the road for technology. You can't have a government backdoor. You have to, respect these IP rights. You have to do this. And the world should only buy from countries who meet these standards. If we were successful at really getting countries to embrace that, which they already do, the key democracies and key technology leaders, then we wouldn't be running around the globe trying to rip out Huawei equipment, which is what we're doing now. And there'll be another version of that down the road. And so why do that? Why not just set the standards right now for what the information age and democracy looks like and get people to unite here? And I think that this will, play out in the AI debate as well, because what kind of information and what kind of stacks and and there's some alliance building there. So the United States can ignore this and have China continue to go around the globe promulgating their own economic strategy and convincing countries who have less resources to deploy their technology, or we can work in an alliance way. And in fact, I think we did this in aerospace. I think it was called the Cape Town Accords, where you say, look, if you buy into these principles, we'll help you get a discount on the technology and we'll help you get it deployed. Right now, China goes and offers that, but we know it comes with a price. And we should be countering this in a very big way, I believe, by this alliance of the countries. And most people, the American public is hungry for this, and I guarantee you people in other countries are also hungry. What are the real rules of the road, for democracies and technology? What are the real rules that should be there? I guarantee you we're not putting enough pressure on China to live up to those standards. Well, the best way to do that is a barrier of acceptance in saying that the world is not going to accept these practices.
Thank you both for sharing your vision for the long game. And, this is marching orders for us as we go into the next phase of the Tech Edge work. And I really appreciate and I'm honored that you came and spent some time with us. We'll keep watching what you're doing because that's going to give us the North Star on the work that we're doing. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you.